What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be working with Flutter. So we're coming in at day 17 of hashtag 30 days of Flutter, and we are going to be building out more functionality to our Pokedex app. So last time we built out a Pokedex app that was able to go out to the internet, get all of our Pokemon listings. We were able to display those Pokemons in a grid, scroll up and down, all kinds of cool stuff. But now we need to actually implement some of the navigation with our Pokemon, with our Pokedex, right? So we are going to be working with, once again, the block pattern, just as we did last time. And we're going to be actually creating a nav cubit so that we can navigate to the details screen. We're also going to build out that details screen, which is going to require for us to go out to the API again. It's actually going to be two APIs. And then we're going to show that data inside of the details screen. So we're going to be doing a lot more interaction with blocks and cubits in this video, and I'm actually going to show you how to make two cubits work together. It's going to actually be a nav cubit and a Pokemon details cubit, and they are going to actually be working with each other in order to display our details. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and jump right on in. And as you can see, we're back over to our most luxurious project, right? And if you want to take a look at what it looks like so far, bam, like that, it loads like that. Oof. Now we need to get the clicking going. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to implement a nav cubit. So let's go ahead and open up our BLoC folder, right? We're going to do a new file, and this is going to be our nav cubit. All right, so as you can see here, we have our nav cubit, which is going to extend a cubit, right? Obviously, but the type that we're going to be working with is actually going to be an integer. Now, the reason why I'm choosing an integer here is because we are going to be passing the ID of the Pokemon into our nav cubit, and that is going to allow us to trigger the other API requests. So we need the ID in order to do everything else, and we don't need to send a whole entire object across because we're not going to do anything else with the other information. So now that we have this, let's think about the two different functions that we're going to add onto our cubit, right? The first one is going to be show the details for the specified, Pokemon. So that function is going to require us to pass in the ID. But remember, when we're working with navigation, we need to make sure that we keep our state clean and update whenever we pop back to the original view. So in this case, when we're going from the Pokedex view to the details view and then popping back from the details view to that Pokedex view, we need to clear that state. So we need to essentially clear the selected Pokemon, or just we can have a function called pop to Pokedex or something like that. So let's implement those now. All right, and there we go. So we have our two different functions. So we have the show Pokemon details is going to take in that Pokemon ID, like I said, and we'll emit that ID. And then we'll also have pop to Pokedex, which is just simply going to emit null. So that's just going to clear out that Pokemon ID, keep our state nice and clean, right? So we're pretty much done in regards to what the cubit can do. But there is some implementation detail that is still missing, right? So when we show Pokemon ID, what we need to do is we need to kick off another networking request, and we need to go out and get the other information required to show all the details. So let me show you what details we're interested in real quick. So as you can see, we're going to head back over to pokeapi.co like so. And if you take a look at the Pokemon, like if you pass in, this is, what is it, 132, I think? 132, I think. Yeah, there we go. So if we pass in the ID right here after the /Pokemon, we get a lot of good information. But they're missing one really good piece of information, and that's like the description about the Pokemon. So when you open up a Pokedex, the Pokedex is supposed to tell you like, hey, like, this is like a little sentence about the Pokemon, and it kind of gives you an idea of what it's like in the wild, right? Well, what we have to actually do is we have to do another query against this Pokemon species API, and that gives us the information through this weird thing called flavor text, and then you have to flavor text entries, and then you have to ask for the flavor text, which is it's crazy. But essentially what we need to do is we need to call this API just so that we can get the flavor text entries and get the first entry and get that flavor text value and have this show up inside of our app. So we're going to be making two different two different requests, this one and that one. So what we want to do is we want to go out to the internet, fetch both of those API requests, turn them into responses, and we don't want to move forward until we get both of those responses back, and then we can form our Pokemon details that we're actually interested in. So just to talk a little bit about what we're going to grab from this API, we're going to be getting, let's see, we'll be getting that height, right? We're also going to need to get that ID. Well, I mean, we're already going to have it, but it's going to be useful to have, and we're going to show it off. We're going to need the name because remember, we're not passing the whole entire Pokemon listing. We're passing the index. So we actually need the name again. And we are going to actually get the types as well. So we want to be able to show that it's like a normal type or whatever, psychic type or whatever, right? And weight too. I might have missed one in there, but we'll get to that when we get there. Anyway, let's go back over to our Pokemon repository, right? And let's update this bad boy. So what we want to do is we want to create two different methods that are going to help us get back all the information. So first we need the Pokemon info, and then we need the Pokemon species info. So we're going to create two networking requests that do that for us. So let's implement that now. And there we go. So as you can see, we have two functions which are almost exactly the same. We have this get Pokemon info, takes in a Pokemon ID, and we have the get Pokemon species info, and that also takes in a Pokemon ID. The only difference between these two functions, the URI, right? Same exact construction. Only difference is we're hitting this endpoint specifically as opposed to just Pokemon, right? Now what we'll do is we'll get back the JSON for both of these, right? We have we're going to get back JSON right here and JSON right here. Now these are two different types of JSON, and what we want to do is we want to create a response object to represent each of these responses as well. So now if we take a look over here in our, over here in our directory, we can see that, our app's growing. We got a little bit of stuff going on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder called data, and anything that has to do with like doing networking requests or something like that, that's what I'm going to put inside this data folder. So, the response, we can put that inside our data folder. We can move that. Thank you very mucho. Repository, we can move that. Thank you very mucho. And now we only have like the main and the Pokedex view that are like outside of that. So it's kind of keeping it, kind of clean, right? So what we're going to do is, just as we did over here, is we're going to create a response object to represent our request. And we'll just create two new files to represent both of those different requests. So let's start doing that now. All right, so as you can see, we have our Pokemon info response right here. We don't have any properties in it. I'm going to go over what we're actually going to be parsing out. And then we have our Pokemon species info. Actually, well, I need to call this species info response, right? I guess I quit halfway through. I don't know what's happening right now. Info response, like so. All right, so now we have our two response objects. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually grab this one first, because we're only going to be grabbing one property out of it, but it's going to be kind of funky. So let's take a look at it real quick. And I'm going to go back to the species API. And what we're interested in is simply this flavor text right here, this first object right here. That's all we're trying to get. It's kind of nested, right? You can see that it's nested in here, which flavor text entries, that's an array or a list, right? And then we have a list of objects. So then we have to parse that object and then get the value for the key inside of that object called flavor text. We're going to do a little bit lazy right here, and we're going to just be working with dynamic types and stuff like that. And we're gonna make it a little bit nasty. But what I'm gonna call this is, I'm just gonna call it the description, because flavor text doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So let's go ahead and create our constructor for our from JSON and parse that value out. All right, so as you can see, we now have our description right here. We're passing it through in our regular constructor, and then we have our from JSON constructor, right? So nothing crazy going on right there, but over here, this looks kind of funky, right? And I'm okay with funky right now because this is kind of a funky API. So you want to be funky, we can be funky. Anyway, what we have is we have the JSON, right? And the JSON is a map, a string of dynamic, right? We know that. So what I'm saying is I want to get the value for flavor text entries, and this is spelled correct. This is spelled correct, I believe. And remember, flavor text entries is an array. We want the first object inside of that array or that list, right? And then that first object is, well, it's an object, it's JSON too. So we're actually going to grab the flavor text from that object. And if we parse it all out like this will actually work. So this is kind of nice because we don't need to like cast it to a specific type to actually say like, oh, it needs to be cast to a string. We need to make sure that it's a string. It's going to check it at runtime. And, you know, as long as all this is correct and it's a string, we could just plug it in there and bam, Pokemon species info response, like so, baby. So now what we're going to do is we're going to head back over to that Pokemon repository, and then we're going to return this in our response. So for Pokemon, we want to return, first of all, a Pokemon species info response. That's what we want to return, right? And then we also need to return it right here. So Pokemon species info response from JSON, pass in our JSON, and bam, clean like the bald dude on the soap. All right, so now we need to do the same exact thing for the get Pokemon info. And we already have that response object right here. Where is it? Pokemon info response right here. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at all the different properties we want to grab from this one as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and follow my notes. I might miss one here or there, but like I said, do we want the abilities? Nah, don't need the abilities. Sorry about that. Do we want the forms? Nah, don't want that. Held items? Nah, I don't care about that. All right, I want the ID. I know that much. Moves, we're not going to be doing that. Name, yes. Species, no. Sprites, species, no, but sprites, yes. So remember, we need to also have the actual URL for the image. We're going to be grabbing that front default. Oh, yes. Other, no thank you. I don't even know what other is, and neither do you. Stats, don't need that. And then types. So we need to, this is actually going to be the hardest one to parse out, right? And we're also going to do weight. So let's talk about what types is. Types is a list or an array of objects. And as you can see, we need to parse out the name. This is what we're curious. This is what we're interested in. So we have to loop over the types inside. We have to loop over the value of the types, in which case we're getting a list of items, right? And then we have to parse out the name from that object. Like, yeah, it's like a double nested object. So this is one object, and then this is also an object. So this is a nested object. So we need to get the name out, and that's going to be our type. And then we need, since it's going to be an array, we want to capture all of them. So it's actually going to be a list of strings that we need to parse out. So let's head back over to our Pokemon info response and start adding all that stuff that we're going to need. All right, and there we go. So let's take a look at all the things that went down right here. So we have all the different properties that I had listed out before: ID, name, image URL, types, height, and weight. Got the regular constructor, right? And then we got our from JSON constructor using a map. Everything in here is pretty easy to parse out. Image URLs are kind of wacky. You know, we have to go into the sprites, which is an object, and then it has just, you know, keys inside of it. So that's the front default. We can take a look at that again, just, you know, to make you feel better. Sprites, you see that it's curly braces. You see that it's keys. That means that it's just a single object. Front default right there, right? So now what we need to do is we need to actually parse out the type. So this is the part that I wanted to slow down for because it is a little bit confusing. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get the types, and then we'll say, just as we did before, right? We want to do the JSON, and we're going to get types, I believe. Yes, types, and we want to cast this as a list, because what we need to do is we need to map over this and then convert all the objects inside of it into JSON and then parse out that JSON. So what we'll do is we'll do a map, and in here, this is going to be our type JSON, right? So we have our type JSON, and if we take a look at it one more time, we can see that we are going to get all of the different types, and specifically from this type JSON, we want to pull out the type. So we'll pass in type, and then we want to pull out the name from that type. So those are the two different values that we're going to be calling or grabbing out of this type JSON like so. So once again, it's going to be type, and then it's going to be name like that, right? So then what we need to do is we need to convert this to a list, because remember, whenever you work with map, you get this nasty iterable, and we're like, nah, we don't like that. So we say to list, bam. Now, what we can also do, since this is going to be a list of dynamics, we can cast it to a string as string like that. So now we're working with, you know, a list of strings. I don't know if this helps you out or not. I don't think that you actually need this, but it helps, you know, it helps. So what we'll do is we're going to pass this types in right here, and then we should be able to make our Pokemon info response like so. Let's head back over to that Pokemon repository, make sure that we're returning our Pokemon info, info response like so. Bam, real nice, I like it. Do you like it? Because I most certainly do. Then we need to return that Pokemon info response from JSON, pass in the JSON, boom, kaboom. Can you say kaboom? I'm sure you can. All right. So we're pretty much set in regards to our networking requests. Now what we want to do is we want to have a cubit that is actually going to perform both of those networking requests and combine them together, right? So what we'll do is we'll create a new cubit, and I'll just call this Pokemon details cubit. All right, so there we go. We have our Pokemon details cubit, and we're going to have it be a cubit of dynamic at the moment. And the only reason why we're going to make it a cubit of dynamic is just because we don't have the actual object that we want to make. Now, the actual object is going to be called Pokemon details. This is going to be a singular object. It's not, we don't want to be working directly with the response, like especially not two of them, right? That's just disgusting. We don't do that. Don't do that. We're going to take those two responses, right? And we are actually going to form them into one object, which we'll call Pokemon details. So before we go any further, just so that we can like resolve this whole dynamic issue, let's go back over to our data, create a new file, and we'll call this Pokemon detail. All right, and here we go. So now we have this Pokemon details object, right? It has essentially a property that hangs on to everything that we had in both of those separate responses, right? So this is going to be able to carry over all the information that we get from the Pokemon information response, and then also the Pokemon species info response. So kind of weirdly named, but yeah. So this is the object that we're actually going to be working with in the state of our Pokemon details cubit, right? Makes sense. Pokemon details cubit, right? Put them together. Oh yes. So now let's go ahead and add this Pokemon details object, and there we go. So what we want to do is just like we did in our other BLoC, our Pokemon BLoC, is we want to have access to our Pokemon repository, because that is how we actually perform the networking request, right? We go to data, we go to Pokemon repository, and this is where we're actually going to be able to, get the Pokemon info and get the Pokemon species info. So in our Pokemon details cubit, we need to make sure that we have that as well, which I just copied over. Oh, I guess I didn't copy it over. Let's add it in. All right, so we have our Pokemon repository now, right? We have that instance. And what we want to do is we want to have a function on this cubit that allows us to actually make a networking request to both of those APIs. And we also want to be able to clear out the state. So let's first start off with, well, we could clear the state. So we could create a function that just is simply, clear Pokemon details, right? Something like that. And that's just going to emit null, like so, right? So we have the clear Pokemon details. That's gonna happen when we are popping away from the details screen, right? But the other function that we're going to have is to get the Pokemon details themselves by the specified ID. So we're going to make those networking requests, combine them into one, and then emit that object as our state. All right, so as you can see here, I wanted to stop right before we did the return just so that we can focus on this piece of information because it is a little bit dense, but it's also freaking cool. So what we're doing is we're going to have our get Pokemon details by the Pokemon ID, right? And we know that this is going to be an asynchronous function just because we have to go out to the internet, get the information back, all that jazz, right? The cool part, right? The awesome part, right, is that we want to do both of these networking requests simultaneously. We want to do them at the same time, and we want to do it in like as fast as possible, right? Because if we were to use a wait right here, which we totally could do, we could wait for this one and then go out, go get this one. We could do that, right? If this one took, 5 seconds, right? We would have to wait 5 seconds before we can go out and get this one. That's no good to us. So if this one took 5 seconds and this one took 2 seconds, we'd be waiting a total of 7 seconds just to get out and get all the information back so that we can create our Pokemon details, right? The cool thing about future.wait is that it kicks off both of these asynchronous functions at the same time, right? In the background, obviously. And if this one takes 5 seconds and this one takes 2 seconds, this one will simply complete first and we'll still be waiting another 3 seconds for this one to complete. So in total, it's still just going to take 5 seconds. Whatever the longest one is, that's however long it's going to take. And then we get back, then we can parse it out because it's returning a list of futures. So if we take a look at this, at responses, it's a list of objects, but it's essentially like the objects that were returned by these asynchronous functions. So now we have the Pokemon info in the 0 index and the Pokemon species info in the 1 index. I mean, isn't that awesome? I think it's pretty awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and emit our Pokemon details. All right, so look at that. That's pretty cool. So I forgot that we actually have to cast these objects, right? Because if you take a look at it, this is just this is a list of objects. We don't know what type of object it is. It's just a list of objects. So in order to like get the syntax highlighting and have everything working easier, we just cast it. So as info response and then as species info response, right? Then we just simply grab all the properties that we're interested in, create our Pokemon details object, and emit that bad boy. Cool. So that's all we need to do for our Pokemon details cubit. Now the important part is how do we actually get this information to the next screen, right? Because we are going to be working with stateless widgets. So how do we pass that information to the next screen? Well, this is where our qubits actually start to work together. In order for us to do this, what we will have to actually do is, let me save this Pokemon details real quick. What we actually have to do is we need to head back over to our nav qubit. And this is going to be the object that's responsible for initializing our our Pokemon, or this object is going to need to have a reference to our Pokemon details cubit. So it needs to hang on to this Pokemon details cubit inside of our nav cubit, because only this nav cubit object knows when we're supposed to show the Pokemon details. And that's going to essentially know when to kick off that logic to actually go out and get our Pokemon details and then return them. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and update our nav cubit to take in our Pokemon details cubit as an argument, right? And it's also going to be a property. And then let's also kick off the networking request. And there we go. So it's as simple as that. Passing in our Pokemon details cubit is now a required property for our nav cubit. And we're going to have it right here. And we are going to kick off the get Pokemon details functionality that we just implemented, those two networking requests, in our show Pokemon details function from our nav cubit. Really cool stuff. Let's save that. Now let's go back and take a look at our main.dart. It's been a minute since we were chilling over there, right? Right now we're just working with showing the Pokedex view. No plans for navigation whatsoever. We don't care about anything, apparently. Like, what were we thinking, right? So what we'll do is we'll create an app navigator object, which will manage when we're supposed to show the Pokemon details, and it's going to be taking advantage of our nav cubit. So let's do that now. All right, so let's stop right here. So we have our app navigator. It's going to be a stateless widget, just like how we do everything nowadays, right? And we're going to be returning this block builder, which is going to be accessing our nav cubit, right? And remember that nav cubit takes in an integer, which is essentially the Pokemon ID, which we are passing into the builder right here. What we'll do is we'll create a navigator, which is going to obviously show the Pokedex view, right? Just like the gallery. And then whenever the Pokemon ID is not null, we'll make sure we show that Pokemon details view, right? Now I'm just going to pass in just an empty material page for right now, since we don't have a Pokemon details view right now. But you guys get the idea, right? All right, so let's implement it. All right, so there we go. We're pretty much done with the navigator. Now there is a little bit more to go, but yeah. So as you can see, we have our navigator. It's going to have pages. The first page, the base layer, right, is going to be our Pokedex view. If we do get a Pokemon ID, which is provided by our nav cubit, we'll go ahead and show this text, the Pokemon ID to string, right? And then we want to make sure that our navigator works. So we're going to have this pop functionality. So this is pretty much done, right? We're still missing the Pokemon details view, but also we need to make sure that we keep our state clean. So whenever we're doing navigation, remember, keep your state clean. And that's the entire reason why, if we go back to NavCubit, we have this pop to Pokedex, so that we can make sure that our state is set to null. And we can make sure that if we were to do like a hot restart, that this doesn't show our what is going to be our Pokemon details screen, right? So we do that by simply doing block provider, and then we say of, and we specify what type of cubit we're working with. Once again, it's just going to be our nav cubit. And from here, we just say pop to Pokedex, like so. So now we'll make sure that our state is clean whenever we, pop back. At this point, we should be set to go. Everything should kick off. The only thing that's going to be missing is essentially the actual details and how that looks. But if we go ahead and stop the app and then we restart it, so I could just do F5 to kick it off. All right, and here we go. So we load up our Pokemon, our Pokedex view. If we tap on it, actually, this isn't even going to work. I just realized that because we're not calling anything from our nav cubit. Right, so let's just do that real quick so that we can, so I can make it seem like I know what I'm doing, because I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so over here in Pokedex view, what we want to make sure that we're doing is whenever we tap on this card, which we need to actually update, we need to actually update this, and we need to wrap it in a gesture detector. There we go. Save it. And gesture detector gives you the ability to do on tap. And whenever we receive that tap, what we will do is we will get our block provider, right? Not going to create it. And then we'll specify once again, we're planning on working with the nav cubit, right? And whoa, all right. And we are just going to say, show Pokemon details, right? And then we need to pass in the Pokemon ID, which we can see right now we're accessing. So as you can see, we're accessing it from the Pokemon listings, and then we can get the index. So we can do it like that. So I'll just say state.Pokemon listing, pass in the index, and then specify the ID, like so. So on our individual Pokemon listing, we're going to pass in the ID right there. And now, if I know what I'm doing, I'll tap on it. We should go to the next screen, which is not going to really show a whole lot, but we should kick off all of our networking requests. And just so that we can see if anything goes wrong, let's clear this out too. And let's go ahead and choose Venusaur. All right, so we have the gesture detector called, you know what, we may actually need to do a restart. All right, so now we have it. Let's go ahead and tap it, see if it works. And it doesn't work. So why doesn't it work? What did I do wrong? Oh, do you know what was done wrong? Because I do. Comments down below, let me know. Do you know? The problem is that we're working with our multi-block provider, and we're actually not dealing with any of these blocks. So what we got to do is we need to actually create an instance of our, well, first we need to add our block provider for our nav block, right? So, or our nav cubit, I should say. And that is going to be in here inside of our multi-block provider. We'll do a comma right here. We'll add in our nav block. Let's do that now. All right, so now we have our nav cubit in here, but also we need to make sure that we have our Pokemon details cubit. So remember that we want to have it in the block provider as well as pass it to our nav cubit, right? So let's go ahead and create an instance up here of our Pokemon details cubit, like so. And then over here in our initial, well, it's already there. Looks like it got added in for us, but we need to also pass it in the block provider so that everything continues to work as well. So then we'll say context, like so, and then we can just pass in the same Pokemon details cubit that was initialized up above as well. All right, let's give it a nice fancy little restart. All right, Venusaur, let's see it. Did it work? No, it didn't work. What's going on? I don't know. All right, so let's go ahead and debug this, heading back over to our Pokedex view, right? And what we want to make sure is that this is actually being called. So let's go ahead and go in here. Let's see if we can print anything whenever we tap on this bad boy. Let's save it. Tap on it again. We're getting 6. We do the Pokemon get Pokemon details, right? We emit this ID, which should be triggering our app navigator. And oh man, why did I do that again? Do you know the problem? I know the problem's right here. Oh my God. So dumb. App navigator, like so. It's not gonna work if you're not gonna make it work. Silly. All right, let's tap it one more time. And bam, there it is. All right, so as you can see, it did work. It's showing the 3. That was the third one that I selected. The reason it looks like this is because remember, scaffold makes our app look sexy. And if you don't use scaffold, oh boy, does it not look sexy. Okay, so it's working. We got the navigation. Now we just need to work on the actual details view. So let's go ahead and do a new file. All right, so look at that bad boy. So nothing too crazy going on right here. We got our Pokemon details view, stateless widget, as we do, right? Scaffold, make it sexy. App bar, show that details, boy. Block builder, important part. Pokemon details cubit is what we're going to be observing for our state, right? That's what's going to be providing us our Pokemon details. We can see that being passed in through the context and the details. This is our Pokemon details object. We will only be showing the Pokemon's name at the moment, but what we want to do is we just want to make sure that everything works. So before I do something stupid again, let's go ahead, go back to our app navigator. Let's change this child to be our Pokemon details view, because I'm gonna be looking like an idiot in my own videos that are supposed to be teaching you how to do stuff, not showing off how dumb I am, right? We do that. We give it a nice fancy little restart. We pull up our app. All right, and here we go. All right, so now we are going to have our Pokemon or our Pokedex view, right? We tap on good old boy Charizard. And boom, it blows up. Oh my gosh. So I think that the reason why this ended up blowing up, and I might be wrong, but I think the reason that it ended up blowing up was because we are trying to show it right away. And what we actually need to do is we need to check if details actually has a value, right? So if details is not equal to null, then we'll go ahead, we'll return that bad boy, right? We don't have no problem returning it. But if it is equal to null, right, then what we're going to show is the center with the child, circular progress indicator like that, like so, and bam. So now let's give it another try. Let's see if I know what I'm doing. I probably don't. Chances are I just don't know what I'm doing. Sorry. So I choose on it and bam, Charizard. We did it. I finally did something right. All right. So at this point, you have all the details and you can go out and make your UI look however you want. I'm going to run through and add in all the details, and I'll go back and cover how I did everything. But that's not like really a super important part of the video, because more likely than not, your UI isn't going to look exactly like mine. So I'm going to go in, start adding out some of these details inside of this center widget, which is going to be, if the details are not null. So let's add those in now. All right, so here we go. A lot of stuff that I put in here, it's all UI stuff. You don't even gotta worry about what it looks like. But I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna talk about a couple of things that we've never covered before. So we got a background color for our entire screen, right? The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm actually going to be displaying stuff in cards, and it just makes it look a little bit better. And the way that you can actually create a custom color from a hex code is by doing 0x and then FF. This first two FF represents the actual alpha of the color. So if you wanted to change the alpha to be like something transparent, then you would modify this value. I don't really know how you would go. I think it would be in between from FF to 00. That would be like completely transparent if I am thinking correctly. But essentially this is showing white, and you can actually see that color over here. From here, we are once again just working with our block builder, which is providing our details. And then we're going to have everything in the center. We want the column to be in the center because that's what we're working with, the child column center. I want to create my card, and I want it to be expanded as big as it possibly can. I also am going to have a column inside of that card, and inside of that card, we're going to be showing off the image, the name of the Pokemon, and then it's also going to show off the types of the Pokemon. Now, as you can see, we're going to specify that the row is having like everything in the center, main center, axis alignment. It's going to keep everything in the center. But the interesting part right here is where we're doing the map. So we have our details, we have our types. Remember, a list of strings. We take that type and we pass it into this new function that returns a widget, which I have down here. It's a super long function. I would highly recommend just copying this from the repo because you do not want to go through this yourself. But all it's doing is passing in a type. And I have a property called color right here, which I'm going to be updating based off of what the type actually is. So if the type is normal, if the string of the type is equal to normal, then we'll set the color to this color. And I actually went through, I got all the different hex values for each of the different Pokemon, just so that you can see these are the correct colors based off of what I found on the internet. Maybe not exact, but they're pretty close to the real thing. And then if we get anything outside of those colors, we'll just show black. But what we're doing is we're then returning this padded widget, which is going to have some, this padding around it right here, but it's going to be a container which is going to have our box decoration color be set to this. And the reason why it's a box decoration as opposed to just the color on the container itself is because we also want to have a border radius. So we want it to have nice rounded corners and stuff like that. And then what we're also doing is we're specifying that the text of that type is going to be uppercase. So it's going to be all tall, right? And then we're making it bold. Yeah. So it looks real sexy. I'm about to show you it right now. But essentially what we're doing is we're passing in each type into that function, and we're spitting out a widget, and then we're turning that into a list of widgets because Rose, the children, works with a list of widgets, not iterable widget. Watch out for that iterable, it'll eat you. So then we have this text, which is simply just going to show some more details, the ID, the weight, and the height, right? And then below that, in a separate card, we have another expanded. We want this card to be as big as possible. I needed to use a size box in order to get the width to be as big as possible too. It wasn't working without the size box. We're going to have a card. It's going to have some padding on it, and then we're just going to show the description in there. Nothing fancy right there. And then we still have the circular progress indicator while it's loading all the Pokemon details. So with all of that said, let's take a look at what it looks like. It looks a lot better than it did before. And if we go ahead and tap on Charizard, bam, look at that. Looking pretty snazzy. Now there's a couple of things going on right here, which is kind of ugly, right? We have this name, it's all lowercase. Should probably fix that. And then we have this string right here looking kind of plain, right? But also the one thing that we are actually going to fix right now is just you see how these cards are pretty much the same size. That's because over here in this expanded, I didn't actually specify the flex value. Now the flex value kind of says how strong is this value. So if I turn this to 1 and I have the other flex right here, and I set this to 2, I want you to take a look at what happens if I save it and we go back to the app. You can see that it makes it a lot bigger, right? So now, since this one has a bigger number, it's going to take up a bigger portion. What I actually want is to have it be the inverse. So we can actually do it 1 right here for the top card and then 2 right here for the bottom card. That's going to make it look so much better. And then another quick thing that we can do to make this look just a little bit nicer is if we go into our actual column for the card and we add main axis alignment, and then we specify that the main axis alignment is going to be space between, and we take a look at that, we can see that it's spaced out between, and I think I want space around. Space around is actually the one that looks better. So yeah, that looks a lot better. But anyways, go through and customize this however you want. Couple of challenges here. Can you get the Charizard, or can you get the name of the Pokemon to actually be capitalized the first letter? That's a good challenge to go through. Can you get this description to actually remove the line breaks? That's a hint on how to do it. You have to remove line breaks. Those are two really good challenges to go through. Also, if you do choose to do the name change, what you can do is you can apply that change over here if you do it properly. So those are two really good good things to try out. Ooh, I like the fact that I messed up. You see how it's doing that? Okay. We just clicked on Blastoise, right? Now if I choose Bulbasaur, or hold on, I was too fast. Hold on, let's see. Butterfree, right? We just chose Bulbasaur. Choose Butterfree. Bam, you saw that Bulbasaur, right? So one of the problems right now is that we're actually not clearing out that state before we go back. So what I want to do is I want to head over to the Pokemon details cubit, or is it the nav cubit? I think it's the nav cubit. Okay, nav cubit. What we actually want to do is when we pop to Pokedex, we also want to clear out those details. So what we're going to do is Pokemon details cubit. No, not that one. Come on, man. Work with me. We're going to clear out the Pokemon details like that. And what we can do is, now that we saved it, now every time we pop to Pokedex, we won't have that behavior. So now I go back to Bulbasaur, right? And it shows the loading indicator, which, you know, whether you want that or not, that's up to you. But like, I think that's the right way to do it. Anyways, that's going to be it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. It was a super long video. Feel free to check out those challenges and let me know what you thought about the app. I think that this is pretty cool. It could be a little bit sexier, you know, in regards to UI and stuff like that, but you have a couple of challenges in front of you. Feel free to work through those challenges and let me see how far that you got on Twitter. Either, you know, DM me or post a tweet. I love to see when you guys post tweets. It's the most amazing thing in my mind. It's like I get to actually see that somebody followed along like all the way through, and it's like, it makes me feel good. Anyways, that's going to be it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Very long video, but a lot of cool stuff in here. Thanks again for your time. Go out there and keep coding passionately.